Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things you want to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now the next thing we're going to do is come right along this area right here and locate the jam nut. We're going to use a 22mm wrench or a 7/8 and just go ahead and break this free. Once that's broken free, let's move along to the nut for the outer tie rod end. To remove the nut, first we're going to remove the locking cotter pin. Let's use a 19mm socket to remove our outer tie rod end nut. Now the next thing we're going to do is continue on by breaking the outer tie rod end free from the knuckle. What we need to do at this point is continue on by unscrewing this. While we're unscrewing it, we're going to count the amount of turns to completely remove it from the inner tie rod end. If it feels like the inner tie rod wants to spin, I always just use some locking pliers on it. That'll hold it for me. Now we can continue on with our count. 1, 2, and so on. All right, write that number down. All right, make sure your locking pliers are on your inner tie rod end to hold it still. We'll continue on by removing our 22mm nut. All right, now we can go ahead and start removing the bellows boot from this. Typically, there's going to be some sort of clamp along the outer aspect right here. Generally, you can go ahead and squeeze it with some pliers, pull it right down and off of there. And then if you were to follow the bellows boot in towards where the power steering rack is, there should be another clamp in there. Our bellows boot in general is in very poor condition, so it doesn't have any of the clips and it's ripped. Go ahead and remove those clamps. After that, we're going to go ahead and grab onto this. We'll give it a little tug and remove it from the vehicle. All right, now it's time to install our bellows boot. Now, if you don't have a specific clamp for it, you can just go ahead and use some wire ties. We're just going to go ahead and put it right around this, and we're going to leave it nice and loose. Now at this point, we're going to carefully slide this part right up and onto the power steering rack deep down inside. Make sure the bellows boot is all the way up against the power steering rack as far as it can and is completely situated. After that, go ahead and apply your clamp. Go ahead and tighten up that wire tie back there. Trim off the excess. Dispose of that properly. Now we're going to take the bellows boot, slide it down here into position, put on the outer clamp. Now we're going to apply some copper never seize to the threaded area of the inner tie rod end. Install your jam nut. We're going to put this approximately halfway. Now we're going to go ahead and put on the outer tie rod end. Let's go ahead and get it started. Once it's started on there, we're going to go ahead and reinstall it the same amount of turns that it took to remove it originally. 1, 2, 3, and so on. All right, once you feel as though it's all the way on there, let's go ahead and get this lined up with the knuckle here. Go ahead and press it right down in there. Take the jam nut, get this in position. We'll come back to tighten this in 1 second. Let's get under here. We'll go ahead and take that nut, start that on there. Now we'll bottom this out and torque this to manufacturer specification. Torque this to 63 foot-pounds. Once you have this torqued, the next thing that you're going to want to do is line up the slot that's on the nut with the corresponding hole in the stud. If for some reason it doesn't look like it's lined up, you need to continue tightening this nut until the very next slot does. Let's go ahead and get the cotter pin through there. Make sure you pin it over to lock it in. Now we can make our way back here to the jam nut. Before you go ahead and tighten this, go ahead and hold on to the outer tie rod end so while you're tightening the jam nut, it doesn't twist the tie rod end. Use my 21 wrench for this. Okay, make sure that's nice and tight. After that, just pay attention to the tie rod end. You want to make sure it's nice and level with the ground and it's not off kilter. If it is, just go ahead and grab onto it, give it a little wiggle until it's in position. All right, so now we can go ahead and get the wheel on here. We're going to start on all 5 of our lug nuts. We'll bottom them out, get the wheel back on the ground, and torque each of them to 100 foot-pounds. With the wheel back firmly on the ground, we can go ahead and torque these to 100 foot-pounds.